Welcome to Birmingham Live Music Project, where we explore impact of various global challenges on the UK live music industry. In the three coming videos, we explore challenges of Brexit and COVID-19 on Birmingham live music ecosystem.
Over 70% of professionals in the UK are self-employed, and 72.73% of musicians report their annual income as below £24,000. This tells us that income from music is often neither substantial nor guaranteed. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused live music to grind to a halt, further exacerbating concerns about the industry's survival and sustainability. No shows means no ticket sales, no merchandise, no drink sales, and for artists, venues and crew, no pay. With lockdowns and social distancing in force, the industry has been encouraged to move online and to reconsider the relationship between fan and performer.
Time restrictions and additional costs are all bad for creative professionals. So we are a sector that is capacity light and time poor. All of this has a detrimental impact on what people are able to do.
The government published quite an offensive advertisement during the beginning of lockdown and encouraged people to change lanes from the arts to more of a cyber career, which was incredibly offensive. And I worry that people like myself will have made that transition.
As a songwriter, I try not to be self-indulgent, and I like to write about other people's experiences and write music that people can relate to, and that tends to often come from nature, other people's experiences, vibes of the room, vibes with my band, and as a result of the pandemic that all stopped, so I had to start thinking of different ways to draw inspiration from and become a bit more insular in that process.
What the pandemic did was it forced people to ultimately listen to music in different ways, and far more people are listening to music digitally. It's just changing people's behaviours.
So COVID's had that double whammy of being, affecting people financially, but also mentally. It's just been draining, I think, emotionally and financially for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a very challenging year and will continue, I think, for at least another year, if not more.
At the start of the pandemic, it was difficult because things were getting cancelled. All my gigs were cancelled, had to stop rehearsing with my band. And also at the time I had things planned in, so I was supposed to go to writing camp in Greece, and one of my producers is based in Sweden. So that was just like a no-go, and I was just watching the Sweden COVID chart every day, thinking it's going down, and then as it peaked again, obviously I couldn't go.
During the summer of 2020, venues had some options to reopen, with stage 1 being the strictest enforcement of lockdown. At stage 3, 47% of the city's venues could have hosted shows in an outdoor space. 81%, however, needed to make changes to their licensing arrangements due to access and noise regulations. Having identified live music as only part of their overall business model, they were also more reluctant to implement costly changes to become compliant. As venues prepared for greater easing under stages 4 and 5, we estimate the average capacity that Birmingham venues would be operating at would be 20 to 25% with 2 metre social distancing and 33% with the 1 metre plus rule. Overall, venues were facing a 66% drop in potential footfall. The city's overall live music capacity of 98,000 dropped by 75% during the summer of 2020. This immediately impacted ticket prices, the availability of events across the city, and the economic viability of live shows. With the profit margin on shows being severely impacted by the drop in capacity, it meant that although venues could technically be open, they wouldn't really be operating.
We were obviously given the opportunity to open in July and August, and we modelled it in every way we could think of, but unfortunately here we don't have very big outside space. So in the end we realised that it was probably commercial suicide to relaunch, not knowing how long we were going to be open for, whether the restrictions were going to put people off. I think there was a lot of uncertainty with people back then. In terms of the actual venue capacity under social distancing, I mean, it shrunk right down from 250 to 50.
You can't just look at music from a fiscal perspective. It has phenomenal social values. So what the pandemic did in terms of changing and affecting music culture was, if you look at a venue, it's not just about the venue, it's about the total ecosystem around the venue, the hotel, the taxi driver, the trains, the food, etc., etc. Each particular area of music, whether it's a studio, a live music venue, a recording artist, it's got its own ecosystem. So if you dismantle one, you ultimately dismantle all of it.
So I think, one of the hidden things about COVID will be the effects on the loss of expertise and knowledge within the music sector. Music, there's a lot of freelancers working in the sector, so obviously musicians, but also sound engineers, lighting engineers, bar staff, right across the supply chain. And I think we're going to lose a lot. Well, we're already seeing the loss of a lot of knowledge and expertise that people have had to go and find other work during the pandemic, and I really worry that they'll come back. I don't think they'll come back in the numbers that they were there before, and as I say, that's a real loss of knowledge and expertise. It's going to be seismic for the industry, I think.
Music and art will, I think, be the new algorithm for growth in all cities and towns. People will begin to value the arts and music like never before.
It's really important that we advocate and lobby for the cultural sector and for politicians and other partners to understand the value of the cultural sector and its ecology.
Many organisations have been particularly vocal in trying to shape the government's response to the pandemic, which has put more of a spotlight on how the music industry can benefit by improving communication and strengthening its own networks. We also can't forget the goodwill, patience and generosity of gig goers. Over 80% bought tickets for events that were later cancelled due to COVID. While 15% requested a refund, 4% kept their ticket without planning to attend, in effect donating the ticket money, and 64% kept their ticket for the rescheduled event.
Large organisations have been unable to respond dynamically and effectively in the face of the pandemic. Smaller organisations don't have such a lead up to their work, so are able to respond dynamically, but our larger organisations just don't have that opportunity.
So while the immediate effect of COVID-19 was the loss of income for live events during the majority of 2020 and into 2021, many have accepted that the current situation has long-term and transformative implications. In the long term, there needs to be a broader focus on supporting our live music ecology. The role of non-state stakeholders will be crucial in supporting musicians and venues through the pandemic and beyond.
It's incredibly important that we get artists and people who work in the arts who have been forced out of their positions because of the pandemic back into them and encourage and support them to do so.
The real value of music and arts will be post-pandemic when it galvanises communities together.
I think COVID has brought about a new way of working in the music industry. I've seen loads of collaborative events going on, fundraisers, Kickstarters, donations. I've seen people working together, looking at how they can cooperate and collaborate. And I think, going forward, I think that might be a new, lovely way of thinking about the music industry. I think the big music industry will do what they've always done, but on a local level in Birmingham, I just see collaborations and partnerships that I've never seen before.
I think one of the things that the last year has taught a lot of people is that you can't just stand on your own 2 feet in a community. You need to ask for help sometimes, and you need to give help, and that's what builds communities, that's what builds music scenes. I've felt a lot of kindness, a lot of goodwill. Hopefully this time will show people that collaboration, communication, 2 vital parts of any community and any scene.
I know across the region there's been 13,000 new businesses that have been registered here, which is amazing to see. I'm one of them by setting up Girl Grind UK, and I feel like there's a sense of get up and do, DIY has to be done, attitude that's come from it. I mean, Birmingham as a city has always had that. We've always been industrial, always been revolutionary, but I feel it more so now, and I'm seeing the doors being opened, collaborative things happening online, and people genuinely wanting to make virtual spaces that are all supportive.
I mean, we're coming out of the pandemic, we're in late 2021. There's going to be some really interesting collaborations, and I think music will be that secret algorithm for our future happiness.
Every time you see a band in any of those venues that I've mentioned, it will be a different experience. And it's important that people get to experience all of that because they've all got value. And I think, unfortunately, in Birmingham, we tend to place so much importance on getting the Ed Sheerans to the NEC, which of course is important, you know, it is important, but it's not more important than supporting venues like Sunflower Lounge and Hare and Hounds and Dead Wax, because without those venues you wouldn't have Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran did his first show here, admittedly to a packed crowd, but he was the last act on the bill. He was, you know, bought up for 50 quid and slept on someone's sofa. There's lots of artists like that that need that first break, and people get to see them in those small rooms. So yeah, I think having that really diverse ecosystem of venues is vitally important. I mean, Birmingham could do with some more, I'll be honest. You know, saying that sounds like I'm trying to create more competition for myself, but I don't think competition is always a bad thing.
The Birmingham Live Music Project team is conducting important research on the impact of Brexit and COVID-19 on the region's music industry, as well as collecting and analysing important data about when, where and how people enjoy live music in the West Midlands. If you would like to find out more about our project, visit our webpage and follow us on social media, where you can keep up to date with our activities, recent results and analysis.